Hey guys, really quick before we begin, I want to mention, just like the Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom review, that you guys can find the chapter times in the description below. So if you want to hear me talk about one element of this movie rather than another, you can jump down to that chapter times in the description below and you can go skip to whatever part you want to skip to. Thanks, guys. What's up, everybody? D-Man back. Welcome to a brand new video, and today we're going to be doing a review for 2018's Rampage. Alright, so in all fairness, I filmed this review immediately after seeing Rampage, and I saw Rampage around the time it came out, like maybe a week after it came out. I should have already covered this ground already. I should have already done this review, alright? So the reason I'm stepping back and having to do it again is not because I was unsatisfied with that original review. It's mainly because the original review, the audio got corrupted. It makes it sound like I'm in a fishbowl or like I'm underwater. You can hardly understand what I'm saying. It's like, I'm sure Godzilla could, because, you know, he's used to living underwater, or Aquaman, he's like, yeah, this is a great review. But you guys, I mean, listen to it. You can hear it for yourself. You have no idea what I'm saying.
Being said, it's a good passion, you know, it's not like a trash movie that you're just gonna get yourself to.
So anyways, I decided I want to review the movie just because I saw it, and, you know, I want to review it because I know a lot of you guys wanted me to when it came out. So I suffered through listening to that corrupted audio over and over and over again so that I could re-script out the review and fix the kinks in it from the first time. So let's jump right into this. Now let's jump into the first topic. Is it good? That's arguable. Obviously, everything in this list is subjective. It's all my opinion. That's what the point of a review is for. So if you disagree with what I say, welcome to reviews. I don't think you know how they work. I think it's all right. This is a textbook definition of a popcorn movie. You just go, turn your brain off, watch good guys versus bad guys, and enjoy. And this movie is a lot of fun if you're able to do that, if you're able to turn your brain off. But if you want to go in there and analyze everything, it's not quite the movie for you. Yeah, I think it's a fine popcorn movie. I think it's a lot of fun, like I said. So is it a cash-in? That's what a lot of people are wondering. Is it a cash-in on mainly the MonsterVerse? And the answer is yes. This does feel like a cash-in on the success of the MonsterVerse and the first Pacific Rim movie. That being said, a cash-in's not always a bad thing. You know, Gamera started out as a cash-in to the Godzilla franchise, and Gamera had an amazing Heisei era. This movie is not that bad either. I mean, even Kong Skull Island to some degree feels like a cash-in on the success of Godzilla 2014, and it's great. Shin Godzilla, that was only made because Godzilla 2014 was successful, and I love Shin Godzilla, so yeah, I think cash-in's not always a bad thing, so I don't think it is in this case either. So, the action, or rampaging. Well, for a movie called Rampage, there is surprisingly little rampaging to be seen in this movie. It really only happens in the last third of the movie, and this is kind of an issue because this is meant to be a popcorn movie, which means a lot of people were left bored watching these human scenes play out. This wasn't a huge issue in my opinion. You know, I'm always welcome to Kaiju movies taking a while to get to the monster action, so I don't think it was a big issue, but do be warned, if you haven't seen the movie yet and you're planning on seeing it, there you go. So let's talk about some of the issues with the movie. Aside from the slow-ish build-up to the monster action, there are lots of leaps in logic you have to take to enjoy this movie. It's a popcorn movie, obviously, so I mean, for instance, there's one point when a character is shot point blank, and I totally forgot this happened until I was listening to that original review, and yeah, it's a problem. So there's one point when a character's shot point blank, and somehow they just walk it off. Even characters mention it, and they're like, shouldn't you be more injured than you are right now? And the person who's shot is just like, I don't know, I'm fine, I guess. Let's go fight giant monsters and save the day and try and stop some humans that we don't like. It's like, it doesn't feel right. You should definitely be on the ground, like, dying or dead. You were shot very close range. I don't know. The next complaint, I guess, would be the human villains are uninteresting and fairly unmemorable. I actually completely forgot they were in this film until I was again listening to that previous review. Some people have complained about the dialogue in this film being a little bit cheesy, and they've also said that the writing for this movie wasn't very good. I didn't think that was a problem. I thought the dialogue was fine and the writing was alright. I don't know what the issue was. One thing that I did have an issue with was how smart the apes are at the start of the movie. Like, straight up, the only way they should have been this smart is if they were huffing ALZ 112 or 113 in between takes, because seriously, they straight up know how to communicate with the human characters, like how to do sign language and all this stuff. It's like, wow, that's very impressive, you primate. There's no explanation for it, makes no sense. This is specifically a problem with George, who very easily could have passed for Winter from War for the Planet of the Apes, because he knew how to communicate with people very easily. I guess we'll jump into the characters. I forgot to mark him down, so I guess we'll talk about George. Forget the actor who plays him, which I feel real bad because he plays King Ghidorah in Godzilla King of the Monsters, and I just did a video recently talking about how I think the guy sounds like a real cool dude, so I'm sorry that I forgot his name, but George was alright. Yeah, I really like the character. He's a cool King Kong stand-in. And that's really all I have to say about him as a character. Davis Okoye, played by Dwayne Johnson. So this character has a bit too much to do. That sounds like a weird complaint, but I'll explain. So when it comes time for the kaiju battle at the end of the movie, you expect to see a lot of crazy monster action, but instead you see Dwayne Johnson fighting the monsters because he's more of a good guy than the good monster is, and he's stronger than the good monster is because he's Dwayne Johnson. That's mainly because this is a Dwayne Johnson movie, not a kaiju movie, which it's still fun to watch. I do enjoy it, and I think Dwayne Johnson does a great job in this movie. I think he's very likable. I think it's hard to find a movie with Dwayne Johnson in it that he's not likable, and I do enjoy seeing him as the lead in movies. However, it's a monster movie. It's marketed as a monster movie, so you expect to see some good old kaiju action, but you more of see Dwayne Johnson whooping some kaiju butt. Dr. Kate Caldwell, played by Naomi Harris. Yeah, I really didn't remember this character. She does nothing for me, and I didn't really like her, but I also didn't hate her, so I don't have anything to say. Acting was alright. We also have Claire Wyden, played by some girl whose name I can't pronounce. You see it on screen. She's the bad guy in the movie. That's about it. I don't really know what else to say about her either. Her brother in the movie, Brett Wyden, played by Jake Lacey. Again, he was a bad guy. He's a bit more interesting and fun to watch than his sister, but still not much of a standout. The only other character that's a main character in this movie is Harvey Russell, played by Jeffrey Dean Morgan. Now, this was not Harvey Russell. This was not some random FBI agent. This was Negan from The Walking Dead, and I love Negan so much in this movie. And I'll explain. So, the reason I say that is because if you ripped Negan out of the Walking Dead universe and just dropped him into this universe, said, hey, you're an FBI agent, gave him a nice pat on the back, this is what would happen. He's straight up, he's just Negan, and it's awesome. I love it so much. It's very clear that when Jeffrey Dean Morgan was signed on to this movie, he was told, hey, you know that Walking Dead character you play? Do it again, play that, keep it up. And this really helps emphasize to me, in my opinion, that Negan in The Walking Dead isn't really a bad guy, because this is the same character. And this movie just shows that in a different set of circumstances, in a world where Negan never runs into Rick and the apocalypse doesn't go the way it does, Negan's a good guy. He'll wind up working for the good guys, so I love it. And also, I know Jeffrey Dean Morgan is not confined to just playing the Negan character. I've seen him in other roles before. I know he has a wide range of acting ability, but it's clearly what the director wanted for this movie. The director, without a doubt, just wanted Negan in his movie, and I am so glad for it because I love the character in The Walking Dead, and I don't expect to get sick of seeing him anytime soon. I would love to see him in more roles, just expanded out throughout time, because I think he's a great, fun character to watch. Let's talk about, is this a kaiju movie? Because like I said earlier, it's more of a Dwayne Johnson movie than a kaiju movie, and I know some purists won't consider this to be a kaiju movie at all, because this is just a monster movie, because it's from America. But I've never let the From America thing stop me. I consider Pacific Rim and Pacific Rim Uprising to be kaiju movies. I also consider Godzilla 2014 and Kong Skull Island to be kaiju movies. So, I don't know. This really does feel like a kaiju movie to me. Purists, I don't know if there are a lot of those purists anymore in this new legendary era of monster movies, but at the time when Pacific Rim and Godzilla 2014 came out, I did run into that a lot, where a lot of people were saying, no, those aren't kaiju movies, they're from America. And I really do think this movie does tiptoe between the line of just normal monster movie and kaiju movie, because the monsters are pretty small. That's really where I draw the line, is how big the monsters are and what they're doing. This movie, it's like they're doing kaiju things, but they're very small. It's like they're 30 to 50 feet tall. You know, that's not big. That's King Kong size. And I really don't consider the Kong 33 movie to be a kaiju movie, nor do I consider 76's Kong to be a kaiju movie. So it's like, I don't know, but at the same time, Kong from King Kong Escapes, he's only 60 feet, and that's still considered a kaiju movie, so I don't know, dude. I don't know. I do think that this does walk more in the line of kaiju movie than it does just generic monster movie, because this movie was clearly a tribute to kaiju movies. It's done in the same style as the Toho and Daiei movies made in the 60s and 70s, which gives you a little bit of the hint of the tone for this movie, albeit a little bit more violent than those movies ever became. But that's what you can expect, just a campy kaiju movie. The final battle in this movie is pretty great. There are some creative uses of George's intelligence, and George is the gorilla, by the way, if you didn't figure that out by now. There's some creative uses of George's intelligence to help him gain the upper hand in this fight at times. It has me very excited to see a different intelligent giant gorilla take on a different giant reptile. I hope to see more creative use of those apes' intelligence in the future. I don't know if there will be a Rampage sequel, but I'm open to it. So, is this a video game movie? This is one that it's like, it should be a video game movie, but is it one? I mean, yes, Rampage does share the same name as an old arcade game, and yes, there are lots of small nods to that arcade game, including an appearance of the arcade machine in the background of someone's office in this movie. But no, Rampage really isn't a video game movie at all, and that's because it doesn't feature the one key story element from the video game that hinted to some sort of broader story in that arcade game universe. That one story element from the game was that the giant monsters were just people who turned into giant monsters. They weren't originally giant monsters, and you know that because anytime you take too much damage, you turn back into a human. And I just want to say, it's kind of cool to really think about that arcade game and the story element if you really want to dive into it. You know, there's not anything to dive into really, but if you want to think about the implications, I mean, think about it. When you turn into a human, you can no longer control your actions, because in their universe, the human, the person, they only have control of themselves when they are a human. And when they turn into a giant monster, they lose control of themselves. The monster takes over, and that's when we, the players, get to take control of those characters. So I think that's really cool to think about. You know, they lose control, we gain control, we are the monsters. I think that's a fun thing that could have been toyed around with in this movie a little bit. Obviously, you wouldn't have the fourth wall breaking thing going on, but having the people lose control as they turn into giant monsters could have been interesting to mess around with. I would still be open to see a movie like that in the future. However, this movie is not the movie for that, because this movie just ignores that story beat. It's totally okay, though. I think this movie works on its own with an entirely new premise. You know, the other storyline's a little bit more interesting to explore. However, this is totally cool, too. And the monsters that appear in Rampage 2018, though they do share the same name as the monsters in the game, they are very loosely based on the monsters from the game. And that's because they needed to change things to keep them from being King Kong and Godzilla. And also, if you want to go there, it could be the giant wolf man too. So I personally am happy that they changed the monsters from the game to the movie. I don't think that if the movie came out with the same monsters from the game, I would have liked it, because it would have felt very disrespectful, and it would have felt like a very clear King Kong vs. Godzilla ripoff. So I do like the fact that they changed the monsters quite a bit in order to fit this new movie universe. It also helps King Kong vs. Godzilla in 2020 feel a little more fresh, or at least I assume, because we haven't already seen that movie in 2018 now. And, you know, if we saw Rampage the way it was supposed to be from the game, that's exactly what we would have seen. We would have already seen the King Kong vs. Godzilla movie, just with different monsters in their place that are pretty much the same monsters. It's confusing, alright? So there are some Easter eggs worth mentioning in this movie. Like I said, there's a Rampage game machine that appears in the background of a couple scenes. George and Lizzie are based on King Kong and Godzilla, although Lizzie's very drastically changed from his video game counterpart to stray away from the Godzilla comparison. And there is also a scene when one of the monsters walks up to a building, punches a hole in it, pulls some people out, and eats them, which is one of the key game mechanics in the original Rampage arcade game. You used to walk up and grab people outside of their windows, eat them, and then you could punch holes in the buildings. So I think for a movie that's just a popcorn movie, that's kind of a vague definition, so I think comparing it to other kaiju movies is a little bit necessary in order for you guys who haven't seen the movie to get a feel for what it actually is like. I consider this to be very similar to Godzilla 98 in the sense that it's a mindless popcorn flick about giant monsters, although I think this is done a little bit better than Godzilla 98 because it doesn't try its hardest to ruin a beloved franchise, but it's that same kind of goofy energy to it. Also, I would say that this is somewhat similar to Pacific Rim Uprising in the fact that it is a mindless popcorn flick. However, Pacific Rim Uprising is a little bit more intelligent than this film, but just a little. So I guess that leads us into Rampage vs. Pacific Rim Uprising. And I know this might seem like it's coming out of nowhere, but at least for at the time when Rampage came out, a lot of people were talking about, is Rampage better or is Pacific Rim Uprising better? Because they're both similar movies that came out around the same time. So just to satisfy anyone who was wondering my opinions about that topic, I think Rampage is going to be easier to just pop in and watch. I think that's true. But even at the time when I saw the movie, Rampage really got me in the mood to watch Pacific Rim Uprising again, strangely, and over time I really have grown to like Uprising a lot more. I'm gonna have to watch it again to make sure that those feelings hold true, but whereas I've had the desire to watch Pacific Rim Uprising quite a bit, I actually haven't had the desire to watch Rampage again at all. I think it's safe to say I was more disappointed with Pacific Rim Uprising because it was just a big step down from the original, but at the same time, it's hard for that to mean anything because I didn't have any expectations going into Rampage, so it couldn't have let me down. So at this point, anyways, I can't really pick which movie I like more. I think I just need to watch both again some more to decide for sure, but at the current point in time, Pacific Rim Uprising is the one that I would go with. So, in conclusion, how's the human story in this film? It's alright, it's all good. Dwayne Johnson and Jeffrey Dean Morgan do their best, and it's really fun to watch these two together, and I think they're great actors, so I'm all down for the human story. Kaiju story, the Kaiju don't have much screen time in this movie at all, but when they're on screen, it's pretty fun, so that's good too. The pacing in this movie is interesting, because this movie's like 2 hours long, but it goes by in a breeze. It's like one of the fastest 2-hour movies that I've seen, because I remember sitting in the theater and then checking my phone after it ended, like, that could not have been 2 hours, because the movie just ends. Like, it's quick. So I'd say the pacing is great for that you don't notice the time going by at all. Special effects, they're all right. Sometimes the humans don't blend in with the backgrounds that they're standing next to. The lighting's different. It's very obvious that they're on a green screen, so sometimes things just don't mesh. Also, the kaiju, in my opinion, looked totally fine. I've never had any problems with them in the movie. However, some people did not like some of the CGI integrations to the city, so I can understand that, where you're saying, like, oh, the kaiju just look fake in the city. That's alright. I didn't have that problem, but I can understand why some people would. Maybe if I see the movie a little more, I'll pick up some details that I didn't notice the first time in the CGI that I would think is flawed. The soundtrack for this movie is fairly unmemorable. It's not worth the money. That being said, I didn't remember it being bad or generic when watching the movie originally, so I'd just say it's forgettable. The humor in this movie is alright. It can be either hit or miss. Sometimes it's pretty funny, sometimes it's just cringy. The action of this movie is pretty good. There are some alright human fight scenes, and there are some even better monster fight scenes, so I think it's fairly well balanced. Now to the recommendations. I would recommend going and checking this movie out when it comes out on DVD and Blu-ray. That means whatever form you can find it in. If you want to watch it on TV, you want to rent it from wherever you want to rent it, that's up to you. I just recommend going and checking it out if you are a Kaiju fan. I'm going to pick up the Blu-ray for sure, so I know that. And at the end of the day, I would rate this movie either a 7 out of 10 or a 7.5 out of 10. I thought it was a lot of fun. Although I didn't think it was like a great movie that I'm just going to watch over and over again. It's definitely not one of my favorite Kaiju movies, but I still think it was alright. So, it was good. I could watch it again. I probably will at some point, and I will pick it up on Blu-ray when it comes out. Thank you guys all for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Sorry for this review coming out of nowhere and being pretty random, but I mean, I tried the first time. It just went horribly.
Alright guys, that does it for this one. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed. See you guys next time. D-Man out.